Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have the top 5 premium decks for the BCS World Finals held in a week's time. This is the top 5 power ranked decks, in my opinion, that we'll see at BCS Worlds. Obviously there will be other decks, but I think these 5 would be the 5 most popular decks at Worlds in a week's time. If you guys need any coaching, my Metafy link is in the bottom right hand corner and in the description. Feel free to book a session and we can get started on your Spring Fest season. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button for all notifications on this channel. So this is a pretty hard list, I gotta say. I kind of thought of like maybe 7 lists, 8 decks I think, that are very, very formidable for the World Finals, but I have to narrow it down to 5. I'll probably put in like, I guess, disclaimers at the end as to what other decks I would think. But the first one is Eradicators, and I think this is pretty self-explanatory. This deck has been tearing down the Hall of Premium for ages. It got nerfed, but it's still a threat, very, very strong. Not only is there the Sweep Command variant, there is also the Vowing Saber variant that I guess utilizes the Demolition Dragon. So 2 variants of Eradicators, and essentially this stride makes it all work. Exterminate, a very, very strong stride. It has disruption in the battle phase. It pretty much has everything that it wants. And it's seen a lot of results in the earlier parts of BCS, and even like to the later stages. We even had BRO. There was still a lot of tops with Eradicators as a whole. So I think Eradicators, a very formidable deck, and I think a lot of people who I guess previously were on Narukami, who qualified with Narukami, will probably bring Narukami to Worlds as well. So the next deck I think will be pretty impactful is Katrina. So Asha with, I guess, the History Collection Stride, and then Katrina. This deck is very, very tanky. Anelma pretty much does everything for you, generates tokens, gives you cards in hand. You essentially have a PG that is essentially, you know, you call 3 and you bounce it all to hand, so free PGs everywhere. And then your board just gets set up like super, super easy, right? This deck is very straightforward. It has a lot of, like, I guess, toolboxing, just because, you know, you can Katrina, you can just call out Honolese, call it a day. 3 Honolese on board, like, I'm pretty sure no deck can really work with that. And then, yeah, you just pretty much have everything else that you want. You have Inverno to play a long game, to pretty much, you know, recycle your PGs back to hand. And then, obviously, you know, you have all your other good shenanigans. You have Megaloma. If you're about to die, you drop this, and then you drop a damage exploder and pretty much take a damage and stop your opponent's turn, right? Very, very strong deck. I think this deck was very well built by the French Vanguard players. So Johan, Louis, very, very strong deck. And they showed results with that as well. So I think Katrina will be a very good pick for Worlds, and a very popular pick, because I think a lot of people who previously may have been on like Mega Colony or anything that is, you know, super aggressive, can just jump to this deck and kind of feels the same, right? So yeah, Neo Nectar, very, very strong deck. Then the third one is Shirui, and this is actually on the rise. So I think a lot of people have finally found why this deck is good. It just tears your hand apart, has Mizukaze, and a lot of decks just can't deal with it. Obviously, you know, there are some decks that have a really good matchup into this deck, but this deck just, yeah, it's so aggressive early. You pretty much run Selengeki, which discards a card regardless of, you know, whatever you do before you even guard. So essentially when you're dealing with this, is a 2-card guard instead of 1 in the early game. Very, very disgusting. This grade 1 discards as well. This card essentially searches for a grade 3 card, which means that you can search for your Forbidol. The deck is very, you know, very powerful in the way that it synergizes with everything. Forktail is just so strong. You play multiple Forktails, deck compresses your deck, you hit triggers, and yeah, that's pretty much it, right? All your good stuff, you still have to stride into, you know, your History Collection. You still have your Rinne's, your Sukumura-kan. Mujin Lord is a very good finisher, and your G-Guards are pretty insane. This G-Guard pretty much spells counterblast 1, draw 1 if your opponent has 4 or less cards in hand, right? Really, really strong. So I think overall, I think a lot of people who used to play Arads, if they're not on Arads, they'll probably jump to a Shirui or probably Katrina. Both decks are very aggressive in their own ways, but I think Shirui is just on the rise at the moment, and a lot of people will be probably picking this deck for Worlds. Then the next deck is everyone's fan favorite, or most people's fan favorite, and that is Night Rose. Grand Blue, the deck is just so versatile that like it literally has everything. Has finishes, it has mid game, early game, or maybe not early game, but like you're playing 4 column bars to find a ship. In the early game, you hit a crit, and pretty much you set the tempo for the game. You have disruption in the battle phase. You have access to homilies. You have access to protection in Urgula. You have CC. You play high amounts of crit, and all your strides do something, right? So I think this deck is very, very strong. And the only gatekeeper is Gridora, right? So I think, you know, if you're playing Grand Blue, it is a very, very good pick. Other than, you know, if half the room is playing Gridora, then, you know, Gridora loses to Shirui and Arad anyways. So I actually don't think a lot of people will be bringing Gridora, or at least as much as I think like during the BCS season. I think it's a little bit toned down. But then again, you know, I'm still going to put it on the power rankings. I think this deck is pretty much the gatekeeper of the format at the moment. If you can't beat this deck with your deck, then yeah, a little bit hard. So I think Gridora is still a very strong pick. The deck just is really, really annoying. A lot of decks just can't deal with it. Grand Blue, like nearly auto loses to this. Katrina also has a really hard time against this as well. And it's just really, really hard, right, against this deck. So yeah, Gridora still a very strong pick for this metagame. So I guess some other inclusions I would probably include into this list that I guess I omitted from this. First one is Highlander. So the reason why I'm not putting Highlander on here is, first of all, the deck is very expensive, with a lot of the grade 4s being very high priced. But then again, you know, if you're going to Worlds, then if you're playing Highlander, you have Highlander, right? You will go out of your way to get it, right? Whether you borrow it from a friend, whether you buy the cards for it, you will have access to it. So I think Highlander is also on here. Highlander actually beats a lot of these decks. Like, it beats Gridora. It may beat Shunui is a little bit hard, I think. And it beats Narukami sometimes. But yeah, all the other decks are like pretty aggressive as well. So I think Highlander has a lot of things checking them, but I think Highlander is still a good deck in itself. Another deck that I think is really good at the moment is Starliner. And not because the deck is good, the deck can just randomly win, but also a lot of people who qualified in the, I guess, regular season of BCS will bring their favorite deck, and you know, a lot of people have favorites as DP. So I think DP will also be a pretty popular deck that, you know, if you are spectating at home, you will probably see DP maybe 1 game or 2 games on stream as well. The third deck that I think a lot of people will bring is Chaos. And I think Chaos is a very strong pick, especially if the room is playing Grand Blue and Eradicators, because it's like its matchup into Eradicators is actually really good. Into Grand Blue is really good because you just lock their front row and call it a day, right? If you play against something like Neonectar, it might be a little bit hard depending on how your opponent plays, but you can play in a way that, you know, you just lock their 2 front row and then that's it. Like, they literally can't do anything, right? The only matchup I think Chaos may struggle against is Shunui, because Shunui uses your units to attack and not theirs. So I guess that's like one of the things that you probably have to look out for. But otherwise, unless like, you know, the whole room plays Highlander, Highlander absolutely destroys Chaos and there's literally nothing you can do about it, right? So I think Chaos is also another good pick. And otherwise, that's pretty much it. There will be like, you know, some rogue picks. I'm expecting probably a Steam Maiden there. Dave Vac, you know, world famous GC player. There'll probably be like other random decks there as well. But I think these 5 plus the 3 that I mentioned before will be the top 5 plus 3 decks that you will see at Worlds. And that is pretty much it for the power rankings. So just to summarize again, I think a lot of people will be bringing Erats if they already had it during the regular BCS season. People may jump to Katrina as well. So this is the second pick. I think Katrina is very strong. And if you've been testing this deck is actually very, very ridiculous. It just farms up, gets free units, and yeah, it doesn't really care, right? So Katrina second, third Shirui, because I think a lot of people who were testing Shirui in the earlier stages are now finding that Shirui is actually good. So I think Shirui being the third pick here is formidable. Then Night Rose, you know, it's still a deck that is, you know, a lot of people's fan favorites, and you know, you'll just bring it to Worlds if you know, play Grand Blue. If you're solemn, you'll probably bring Grand Blue. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't. So yeah, you know, Grand Blue still a very good pick. And then fifth, Gridora, because it's the gatekeeper of the format, and a lot of people will still be bringing this to try to beat, you know, the likes of Grand Blue, the likes of Katrina. So yeah, that is pretty much the top 5, and then the last remaining 3, Highlander, Chaos, and DP. If you guys like this video, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think will be played at Worlds. You know, if you guys are watching from home, what do you guys want to see on stream? And you know, what decks have I missed out on this list, on this power ranking? There probably is some decks out there that I am missing. Regalia, for example, there'll probably be like a Rogue Fenrir or something. But yeah, there'll be like a whole bunch of like random decks, but I think these 5 plus 3 are going to dominate most of the pie chart for, I guess, the world participants at Worlds. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.